It's perfectly normal to have occasional moments where we feel nervous or worried, even a little fearful sometimes. There's always some fast approaching work deadline or concern about the well-being of a child. But what about when those anxious feelings completely overwhelm and consume a person? Well, it can be debilitating and in some cases even life-threatening. In Australia today, there's an epidemic of anxiety. It's not understood and it's not talked about. But this year, a staggering 2 million people will suffer the crippling condition.
It's 1:50 a.m. and I can't sleep. My heart was racing and I feel a little bit tight in the chest. I always find my anxiety increasing.
This is what living with severe anxiety looks like.
I find it hard to focus because it's almost that my eyes are over-focusing on everything and looking for danger everywhere.
In the midst of a panic attack, you absolutely think you're dying. That I feel like I can't breathe properly.
It engulfs and crushes its victims.
I describe it as having anxiety in my bones. It's a visceral fear and just despair.
And leaves them feeling helpless and worthless.
My anxiety is a constant voice and a constant thing in the back of my head, just undermining me and cutting me down constantly. My anxiety is totally off the scale.
What do you think the perception of anxiety is in the community?
Weakness. Dead set weakness.
Say to someone you have severe anxiety, and more often than not, the response will go something like this. Why are you anxious? What have you got to worry about? Pull your socks up and get on with it. But that's impossible for the 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men who will experience and be diagnosed with serious anxiety at some point in their lives. So why then do we barely acknowledge this mental illness?
48 hours after I sort of had a bit of a breakdown.
For most of 45-year-old Megan Barrow's life, she's tried to battle, but mostly been beaten by anxiety. At its worst, she endured daily physical panic attacks.
It would be heart palpitations, chest pains. I had really bad chest pains. I would actually get pain down my left arm. I felt out of body, that I wasn't really alive, so I'm thinking I'm actually dying in that moment. I thought if I move from this couch, I potentially might die.
Megan's severe anxiety manifested as severe agoraphobia, and she was once so paralysed by fear she couldn't leave her lounge room. And how long did you spend on the couch?
Close to 3 years.
It's extraordinary.
And a lot of the day I would actually have my finger on my pulse, just checking. And I would look outside and think, it's like I'm stuck in a cage. I'm just too scared to get out of there, out of this cage, and I just so desperately want to be normal.
Frustratingly for sufferers, science can't tell us exactly where the illness comes from or give us definite answers about treating it.
When we start talking about anxiety disorders, there's a huge array of these things from, I guess, very specific things like obsessive-compulsive disorder and PTSD, right through to generalised anxiety disorder, which is a sense of just being very, very general, very high chronic anxiety overall as well.
Dr. Patrick Clark from the School of Psychology at Curtin University in Perth studies the anxious brain.
There has been a tendency sometimes for anxiety to be regarded something as the common cold of mental health problems, where people can be seemingly very, very high functioning and do very well professionally and the like, but at the same time be absolutely riven with anxiety in a way that permeates every aspect of their lives and relationships.
Give. How would you rate your anxiety?
Off the scale, my anxiety is crippling. On the outside, I'm looking relatively calm and normal, but on the inside, I'm at the red zone You know, any tyre squeal or any anyone slamming a door, or any kid screaming or anything like that sends me straight into fight-flight mode.
Father of 3, Rob Atkins is used to fighting.
After I sink this.
He was a soldier in the army and then a frontline police officer in Victoria for 22 years. Outwardly, he's a tough guy, but he can't beat anxiety. Do you get angry?
Oh, terribly so. My anxiety doesn't come out in fear. That's very private, my fear. My anxiety comes out in rage and like controlling, and if I don't respond, then it's a massive level of rage.
Shouting?
Shouting, physically, everything. I was an absolute mongrel to my family.
I'll hike for 5 hours on my own, and it's one of the most beautiful things. It's just
It affects different people differently, but anxiety doesn't discriminate when it chooses its victims.
It gets me out of the city.
As Sarah Wilson knows too well. The magazine editor, television presenter and well-known author has been stalked by the mental illness for as long as she can remember.
I sort of describe it as going down a stream and you're trying to grab onto slippery kind of reeds, but the flow just keeps carrying you down, down, down. And you get down to a point where your rational mind is just no longer able to find a way out.
When Sarah got the opportunity of a lifetime, hosting the opening season of hit show MasterChef, it caused one of her worst anxiety meltdowns.
I didn't cope. I really didn't cope. You know, we were doing 17-hour days. Yeah, it was the perfect storm for an anxious breakdown.
In her mid-30s and publicly very successful, Sarah was privately in crisis. TV host, magazine editor, businesswoman, model, you're beautiful. Do you think people would be surprised that if we scratch the surface, there's a whole lot going on?
Yeah. I can also pretend, and I've been very seductive at hiding my anxiety. The anxious, we're very good at that. We're very good at, guising it. Billy's reported back positive.
But enough is enough for Sarah Wilson. She says she no longer wants to hide the shame of her anxiety and says acceptance of it is the first step to overcoming it. You describe anxiety as your mate that you just bounce along with.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's your fuel as well.
Yeah. It's given me a lot of energy. It's also seen me plummet to great depths at times as well. But it's kept me very, very real. And it's a choice as well. I choose now to see my anxiety as a beautiful beast.
Still to come, the groundbreaking research, which might hold the key for sufferers.
You'll feel a bit of a tingling, itchy type sensation.
And the amazing assistance dog.
This is what he did in the Muffin Break coffee shop.
Giving Rob his life back.
Man's best friend, literally, physically, saved your life.
That's next on 60 Minutes.